people, welcome to Prep Elevate. Today we'll discuss the VARC attempt strategy. So basically we are going to discuss how should you attempt the VARC section in the actual CAT exam. So before we proceed to discuss, I would like to give a quick disclaimer which I feel is extremely important. Whatever strategies are discussed, no matter what the platform is, it's only a blueprint. Okay, there is no perfect strategy which works well for everyone. So take it with a pinch of salt, take all these strategies as a blueprint and then attempt it in your mocks, try it out in your mocks, see how is it working out for you, and then come up with the best strategy that works for you. All right, so let's just quickly start with the video now. Okay, before we discuss how to attempt the section, let us understand the pattern of the paper. Okay, so I'm just taking the most recent CAT paper as reference. I am taking CAT 23 as reference. Okay, so how many questions did we have in the VRC section? We had 24 questions. Okay, and what was the time that we had for this particular section? We had 40 minutes. Okay, we had 24 questions and we had 40 minutes. Now, how were these 24 questions segregated? What was the breakup of the questions? So basically, the entire VRC paper is segregated into two major chunks. One is the RC, next one is the verbal ability. Okay, so you had 4 RCs and 4 questions per RC. So I'm writing it as 4 into 4. So this is 16 questions. And under verbal ability, you had 8 questions. Okay, under verbal ability, what were the subtopics? So you had para jumbles. Okay, you had para summary. You had odd sentence. And you had para completion. Okay, so 4 subtopics: para jumbles, para summary, odd sentence, para completion. 2 questions per subtopic. Okay, I'm writing it here. 2 questions. Okay, 2 questions per subtopic. So this is 16, this is 8. Together you had 24 questions, you have 40 minutes. So this is the reference that we are going to use. This is the template of the question paper, the VRC section. Okay, now let us understand how should you attempt this section. Okay, now each one of you has a different way of looking at the section and your comfort level with the section is different. Accordingly, you need to understand what should I start with, how should I proceed, and which are the kind of questions that I'm going to end with. So far, as far as my experience is concerned with this section, I am roughly, I'm going to try and explain what I have understood. 2 kinds of people majorly. One kind, let us say, they are comfortable with language. Okay, VARC is their strength area, or which I would also like to call as their score maximizers. That means they go ahead and attempt the paper with the intention that maximum marks in this paper for me are going to come from the VARC section. Okay, so I'm going to try and get as many marks as possible from this section. So score maximizer for them. For these people, you could always choose to start with RCs because you are comfortable with language. It does not disturb you to read something really dense in this section, to start off with something really dense. Okay, now understand something. VRC section is the first section of the CAT paper. So basically it sets the tone for the entire paper. So for the first 3-4 minutes, you're still in the process of like registering what you're trying to read. Obviously you're reading the paper, but the process of registration has not really started. So if you are somebody who is not absolutely comfortable with language, maybe don't try starting with the RCs. Okay, because RCs are never going to be that easy breezy for anybody. Okay, we have easy RCs, but then it's not going to be easy breezy. So if you want a quick warm up, then it's always a great idea to start with the verbal ability portion. Okay, so First, we spoke about people who are familiar, who are great with language. Language is their comfort area. VARC is their score maximizer. If you fall in this category, then you could always choose to start with RCs, no problems at all. But if you fall in the other category where VARC is not really your strength area, you're basically a numbers kind of person, then in that case, starting with verbal ability, in my opinion, is a better idea. All right. Now within verbal ability also, what should you actually start with? किस चीज से start करने से बेहतर होता है? See, understand something. पैरा जम्बल्स जो टॉपिक होता है ना, पैरा जम्बल्स, उसमें ऑप्शंस नहीं होते हैं. इट्स थीटा काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चन. What is the let's say advantage of para jumbles? Okay, just because it does not have options, so it becomes a non MCQ theta kind of question, तो उसमें negative marking भी नहीं होता है. So a lot of times I've heard people say that, you know, because negative marking nahi hai, so I don't mind spending time with para jumbles, because ultimately even if my answer goes wrong, then, you know, I still don't get a negative marking. But understand something, time investment is a crucial factor for any exam. Even if you're not losing marks, you're losing time which you could have utilized it in, you know, some other topic, some other question. So I would never advise people to, you know, start with parajumbles until and unless it's absolutely, you know, the answer is pretty evident. Okay, so I would suggest start something with para summary or odd sentence, which are easier to register and capture. Now ठीक है, I understand this. Para summary भी it's not always very easy, odd sentence भी it's not always very easy. But remember, out of the two questions that you have, you will always see एक question तो definitely manageable होता है. And if you have looked at the PYQs that you know I was trying to explain through the previous videos, you might have noticed I keep telling you this you know thing, that सारे क्वेश्चंस अटेम्प्ट वर्दी होते भी नहीं है. तो स्किमिंग से मुझे कुछ तो पता चल जाएगा कि इज इट अटेम्प्ट वर्दी और नॉट. सो आउट ऑफ टू क्वेश्चंस हमेशा यूजुअली आई हैव सीन, यू नो, वन ऑफ देम इज डेफिनेटली मैनेजेबल. सो फिलहाल मैं आई एम गोइंग टू टारगेट दिस वन क्वेश्चन. पहले तो ये एक क्वेश्चन को मुझे टारगेट कर लेना चाहिए ना, and then I am going to go ahead with the other questions. So if you are somebody who is not really that comfortable with language, then I would suggest starting with para summary or odd sentence is a better idea, and then, you know, you could move towards RCs. And last, always I advise people कि last में, you know, attempt para jumbles, because para jumbles में the probability of getting the answer wrong is very very high. You know that one alphabet goes here and there and the entire sequence is disturbed. So while you are attempting the paper, it might seem like, you know, I'm arranging it in the right sequence, but then later we have seen that usually it does not happen, right? So para jumbles is that one subtopic which takes a lot of time, but return on investment is not that great, at least for most people. Okay, so para jumbles, I feel if you could attempt it towards the very end, and para jumbles maybe I'm not saying all the two questions are difficult, नहीं, one question हमेशा manageable होता है, little tricky but manageable. So वहाँ से मुझे एक question भी अगर सही मिल जाए, but if I attempt it towards the very end, at least majority of my paper will be covered. And you know, there is something known as stress factor. Para jumbles requires a lot of attention because you're arranging, you're doing the manual work all on your own. कोई ऐसा tally नहीं है आपके पास. You don't go back and see, अच्छा this option is correct, so I'm going on the right track. So this requires a different level of attention altogether. So if I am in that frame of mind कि अच्छा मेरे बाकी questions तो attempt हो गए, now I can safely spend time with para jumbles, then the probability of getting that easy one correct, that is very high. ठीक है, so just take this into consideration. Para completion, again, you know, I feel para completion is tricky. अगर समझ में आ गया तो आ गया, अगर नहीं आया तो the probability of getting it wrong is also pretty high until and unless you're super confident about, you know, the kind of questions that you're getting. So para completion should, again, you know, like it depends on your level of comfort. Usually I have seen para summary or odd sentences में the probability of getting it right is better, ROI is better, but then to, you know, each his own, to each his own. That is what I say कि एक standard plan नहीं होता है. If you ever, you know, your mocks have told you कि मेरा तो para completion बहुत ही अच्छा होता है and I start losing marks with para summary, ठीक है, then go ahead and, you know, change this sequence, start with para completion, then totally your choice. Usually I'm just giving you the usual scenarios that I have seen with students, and accordingly I'm trying to explain. ठीक है, so पैरा कंप्लीशन, ऑड सेंटेंस, पैरा समरी, पैरा जंबल्स, ये 4 सब टॉपिक्स होते हैं। अटेम्प्ट करने का सीक्वेंस इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, ये फाइंड आउट करो। सो अपने मॉक्स में ना ट्राई एक्सपेरिमेंटिंग कि कौन से सीक्वेंस में मुझे ज़्यादा मार्क्स मिल रहे हैं, कहाँ पे मुझे ज़्यादा मार्क्स आ रहे हैं, एंड दैट शुड आइडियली बी योर सीक्वेंस ऑफ अटेम्प्ट। सो ये सब टॉपिक्स में सीक्वेंस ऑफ अटेम्प्ट पता होना बहुत ज़रूरी है। एंड वी आर ऑलरेडी बाय द टाइम आई एम फिल्मिंग दिस वीडियो वी आर towards the end of September. So let's say you take another 15 days, you take another 20 days, but finalize the strategy. By end of October, you should be pretty clear what am I attempting, why am I attempting, and how am I attempting. So ये 3 questions हमारे हमेशा clear होने चाहिए. What, why, and how. इसकी क्लैरिटी हमें होनी चाहिए, ठीक है. सो ये टारगेट एक सेट कर लो that by the time October ends, max October end तक ये 3 questions मुझे क्लैरिटी इसमें होनी चाहिए, ठीक है. Now coming back to the RCs, okay, there is a little more that I would like to discuss here, but I'll combine it with RCs and discuss, ठीक है. 4 RCs होते हैं CAT में, ठीक है. So usually this is what I have seen. So let's say RC1, RC2, RC3, RC4, 4 RCs हो गए, ठीक है. Now what have I usually seen? See, I have seen that one of the 4 RCs is easy. One of the 4 RCs is easy. 2 RCs are medium level, ठीक है. And then there is one RC which is definitely difficult. ठीक है. One of the RCs is easy, 2 medium होते हैं और एक difficult होता है, ठीक है. Now understand something. Even if you are excellent with language, even if you are targeting all the 4 RCs, वहाँ पे आपका accuracy takes a hit. Okay, so even if you have time and you can read very quickly, you can understand language very quickly, accuracy takes a dip, it takes a hit. So usually what I suggest people is, कहाँ पे difference create होता है between people who are doing extremely well in the section and people who are slightly behind them, ये 2 medium RCs में वो decide होता है. एक जो easy RC होता है ना, it is easy for everybody. So questions भी बहुत student friendly होते हैं, it's very easy to read, topic भी बहुत student friendly होता है, questions are not really very tricky, it's very straightforward. So most of the people they breeze through this RC. ये RC तो सबसे ही हो जाता है, ठीक है. Medium level RC में क्या होता है, there is one RC जो सारे लोग ऑलमोस्ट अटेम्प्ट करना चाहते हैं, या ये ना दे ट्राई एंड अटेम्प्टेड. सेकेंड वाला जो मीडियम लेवल आरसी होता है, दैट इज द डिसाइडर. एक डिफिकल्ट आरसी आई एम नॉट टेकिंग इट इनटू कंसिडरेशन, ठीक है. ये तो लेट्स से इट डज नॉट एग्जिस्ट. एंड व्हेन आई से डिफिकल्ट आरसी, व्हाट डू आई मीन बाय दैट? The language is absolutely dense, या तो the questions are superb, it's like supremely difficult to understand. There is a lot of indirect references, inference based question, author would most likely agree with, least likely agree with, critical reasoning type questions. तो ये questions का जो bucket होता है ना, it is usually difficult for most people. So that is how I categorize कि एक RC तो let's say difficult है. So ये जो 2 medium level RCs है ना, इसमें से अगर if I can target 1.5 RCs also, 1.5 मतलब what is the calculation? 1.5 easy RC complete करने की कोशिश करना है. 2 medium level RCs में what I have seen is, one of those RCs is pretty much everybody can like take down those 4 questions, या 4 में से 3 तो हो ही जाते हैं. नेक्स्ट वाला जो मीडियम लेवल आरसी होता है ना, इट इज अ लिटिल मोर डिफिकल्ट टू सेल थ्रू. तो मीडियम में भी लेट्स से देयर इज थोड़ा सा लेस डिफिकल्ट एंड थोड़ा सा कंपैरेटिवली मोर डिफिकल्ट, एंड इट इज लेट्स से द क्वेश्चंस आर द डिसाइडर, 4 क्वेश्चंस ईच. बट यहाँ से अगर मुझे 4 क्वेश्चंस मिल रहे हैं ना, वहाँ से यूजुअली आई विल बी लाइक 100% sure about 2 of these questions. So that is what I mean when I say कि 2.5 RCs. So 2.5 RC boils down to क्या? एक RC के सारे questions, दूसरे RC के सारे questions, तीसरे RC के let's say 2 questions. So I'm looking at basically 10 questions. Now ऐसा नहीं भी हो सकता है. Let's say एक RC आपका ऐसा मिल गया, इसमें 4 questions नहीं बन पा रहे, let's say उसमें 3 बन पा रहे, तो next RC में we have to try कि 2 या 3 उससे बन पा रहे हैं या नहीं. So वहाँ पे वो decider create होता है कि अगर मुझे वो सेकेंड डिफिकल्टी द मीडियम लेवल जो सेकेंड वाला मीडियम है, अगर उसके भी मुझे सारे क्वेश्चंस बन रहे हैं या लेट्स से 75% ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस आई एम एबल टू क्रैक, सो माय सेक्शन इज गोइंग रियली वेल. बट वहाँ पे अगर आई एम स्ट्रगलिंग बिकॉज ऑफ द जॉनर ऑफ द आरसी या द क्वेश्चंस, सो वहाँ पे लेट्स से 50% क्रैक हो रहा है, तो वहाँ पे देयर इज अ डिसाइडर दैट इज क्रिएटेड वेर योर परसेंटाइल ब्रैकेट्स आर डिसाइडेड. सो एक आरसी तो यू कैन टेक डाउन इफ यू हैव स्टडीड वेल ऑब्वियसली. एक मीडियम लेवल आरसी में भी यूजुअली इट इज डूएबल. ये सेकेंड मीडियम लेवल आरसी, दिस क्रिएट्स द डिसाइडर. सो अभी वॉट एवर हार्ड वर्क यू आर डूइंग, वॉट एवर टाइम यू आर डेडिकेटिंग टू आरसीज, जस्ट मेक श्योर कि ये 2.5 आरसीज वाला कैलकुलेशन मुझसे क्रैक हो पा रहा है या नहीं. नाउ अंडरस्टैंड समथिंग, डोंट अटेम्प्ट क्वेश्चंस विद दिस इंटेंशन कि इतने नंबर ऑफ क्वेश्चंस तो बनने ही चाहिए. दिस इज नॉट अ वेरी गुड स्ट्रैटेजी. ठीक है, आई एम गिविंग यू नंबर्स टू हेल्प यू अंडरस्टैंड, बट numbers you should not decide that way. I have seen this happening with people. So let's say if you go ahead preconceived notion, with a preconceived notion that at least I should be able to knock off these many questions because that is what my mocks have told me. But God forbid if your section turns out to be insanely difficult, your decision making abilities are paralyzed, you will always want to hit that particular number and you start attracting negative marking. That out of 24 I've been so good with VARC, 16-17 तो मुझसे बनना ही चाहिए. No, that is not the ideal way of looking at it. The ideal way of looking at it is कि डिसीजन मेकिंग मेरा क्या काम करता है. एम आई एबल टू जज द डिफिकल्टी लेवल. ये एक्यूरेसी, ये नंबर्स, रिमेंबर इट्स अ परसेंटाइल गेम, इट्स ऑलवेज गोइंग टू बी रिलेटिव. सो योर फिक्स्ड नंबर ऑफ अटेम्प्ट्स डू नॉट help you get to a particular score or a percentile. That's a wrong way of looking at it. Okay, that's not a very good way. That's a deceptive way of looking at the section. Good, you should understand your strengths कि हाँ यूजुअली 2 आरसीज मुझसे बन जाते हैं, यूजुअली पैराजम्बल्स मुझसे हो जाता है या ऑड सेंटेंसेस मुझसे हो जाते हैं. बट एक्चुअल एग्जाम सिनेरियो में क्या क्वेश्चंस डिफिकल्ट हैं? अगर डिफिकल्ट हैं सो आई शुड बी रियली वाइज अबाउट माय अटेम्प्ट्स. थोड़ा सा आई हैव टू रिस्ट्रिक्ट माय अटेम्प्ट्स. ओके, डोंट गो विथ अ फिक्स्ड नंबर इज व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू रिपीट. आई हैव हैड पीपल fall into this trap that my average number of attempts is always around 15 to 18, and in the actual CAT paper I tried doing the same thing. Turns out things did not go well. Okay, things did not turn out in my favor. I don't want any of you to fall into that scenario. So be wise. So when you're attempting your mocks, whatever strategy you're trying, sequence strategy you're trying out which subtopic works out well for you, don't do it on the number of questions. Understand it's on the basis of how you perceive the difficulty level of the questions to be, and then you decide that how many questions should I go ahead with. So I'll just give you a quick summary. Achha, a lot of people also come up with how do you divide the 40 minutes. So 40 minutes ka usually the breakup should be 30 plus 10, or I would also say 25 plus 15. Okay, sometimes 10 minutes is too it's not a sufficient time to handle these subtopics. So maybe a 25 plus 15 breakup should also work well. So I'm just writing it here. 40 minutes could also boil down to 25 plus 15. So in RCs, let's say you are spending 25 minutes and 15 minutes. Again, rough numbers. अगर ये 28 हो गया तो accordingly you decide how do you reduce that. So ultimately 40 minutes है ना हमारे पास, तो उसको आप decide कर सकते हैं. I'm just giving you a rough number. So RCs में एक RC definitely, एक मीडियम लेवल आरसी और दूसरा मीडियम लेवल आरसीज में डिसाइडर होता है कि हाउ मेनी क्वेश्चंस आर यू एबल टू अटेम्प्ट. एंड देन इस सेक्शन में से योर टारगेट नाउ शुड बी टू अंडरस्टैंड कौन सा सब टॉपिक मेरा स्ट्रॉन्ग है, उससे मुझे अटेम्प्ट करना स्टार्ट करना चाहिए. एंड देन I'll go back and fix. Usually my suggestion would be parajumbles should feature last, but depending on what kind of questions you're getting and your personal comfort zone, you could always switch. So people very good with language could start with 2 RCs, go to verbal ability, come back and take down the third RC. People not very comfortable with language could start with the verbal ability, come back to RCs and end with parajumbles. Okay, so basically this is how you should be attempting the section. If there is any specific query that you have regarding the VRC section which I have not addressed in this video, then you could please feel free to comment, and then I'll try creating a video on that one as well. So these were my inputs. Remember, what, why, how, ये 3 questions की clarity हमें होनी चाहिए max by October end. I would preferably say by 20th of October. Okay, so that's it for today's video. I hope it was informative. You learned something from this video. Utilize it in your mock. See what works well for you, and then you could comment down if there is any particular suggestion that you need from my end. So thank you so much for watching, and take care everybody.